If you're standing like so for so long, or here, it doesn't matter. Watch what happens next. Your weight shifts, and you turn like so, or you turn like so, or you turn like so, or you turn like so. Then you shift back that way, and then you do it to the other leg. And until the leg alignments are stable on one leg, on both legs together, there is no point shifting your weight to the other leg. Now, one of the great difficulties that happens with this is that, if we can, Isaac, if you can bring that thing back here. There you go. Keep in mind, the other thing is that the perineum has to stay open, because the things that are going to happen, the most natural events that can occur that you don't want to, is that, number one, you shift your weight over to one leg, and you really make sure you get a straight line dropping from your quad to your foot. The next thing is that as you turn, it's utterly important that your perineum not close down. The same way that the energy from your legs has to go through your perineum to go to your upper body and down again, the energy has to go through your armpits either to come out your arm or back in again. If either your armpits or your perineum close, you cut the power off at the main juncture. Okay? So when he goes and he's like this, you do it by twisting your legs, and you want to turn ideally until you're at least 45 degrees, and then as far as you want to turn. But 45 is where most people go now. The natural tendency is that when you turn is for the leg to collapse in. When the leg collapses in, the perineum closes, so you don't want that. So for example, just now turn to the side, Isaac, and have your weight on the way on the back leg. That's right. You keep your weight on your back leg and let it go, and you turn and you're facing 45 this way. Then what do you do again? Keeping your weight on your back leg, you turn to the middle. Let your weight settle in a 50-50. Stabilize there for a bit to make sure the flow is going even down both legs. Because when you want to go on to one leg, there is a tendency to essentially weaken the energy circulation on the other side of your body. Do you understand? If you emphasize the right, you can lose it on the left. If you emphasize on the left, you can lose it on the right. And the objective, the best scenario, is for the chi always to remain equally in both legs, regardless of whether you have weight on it or not. Okay? Regardless if you have weight on it or not. For that, the perineum has to stay open. For that, the energy from the spine must hit here, it must go through the legs, and must go down to both feet. So nothing is changed when both your feet, when you have 2 feet this way, when you shift onto one, all these alignments in this flow from the crown of your head and your fingertips to your feet and back again must remain stable without a drop. Like you get some little voltage meter, you don't want it to go like all the way over here and then zip back in the other direction. So again, so if he goes here, he stays 50-50. You can do this however long. Most people, for example, truth be known, is that if they could stand, let's say, over an hour, right? They will spend an hour in this middle position and probably not much more than about 10 minutes on each leg. Until you go past 3 hours. Then in which case it is 2 hours in the middle and 2 hours on each leg. And that's the way it builds up. That's, for example, what I did in college. Okay? Some of you read about that. Now, I don't advocate that for most people, not having the time, and it's a lot easier when you're in school, because then if you're a reasonably good student, you can carve out the time. But if you're not, oh well, too bad. Can't do it. That's it. You know, conditions. Now, here you go. So now when he goes the other leg, again, remember, the perineum has to stay open, he has to shift the leg, and this line from your quad through your foot has to remain stable. Then let the heel come up. No. First here. Shift it, let it come up. So that when you just pick your heel up, you're really clear if the energy and the flow from your leg is going down to your toes. Then turn and keep it as you fix it. Okay? And then again, when you want to come back again, keeping your weight here, bring your foot to where it's facing forward. Then shift your weight into the middle again. So I'd like you all, does everyone understand the principle? Yes or no? I'd like you all to get up for a few minutes and give us a shot. All right, so put your hands in whichever of the positions that for some reason you like or you think you'll end up in. We've done 4 positions. It doesn't matter which one you wish to do. Okay? Now, shift your weight onto your left leg Shift your weight onto your left leg completely. Make sure your perineum is open up. Everything is going down. And lift your heel. Lift your heel. All right, so all your weight's on which leg? Left. Now. Turn to the right, not moving your legs, but by turning your muscles, by twisting them. Now, is your weight 50-50 in the middle of your feet, as, for example, it is in the lady here? No, your weight has to be 100%. Okay, how do you know if your weight's 100%? Okay, pick it off the ground. If you had to shift your waist, if your waist had to move, your weight was not on one leg. So let's try it again. Let's come back to the middle. And now let's put the hands down just for a moment, just so you're really clear. Shift your weight to the left. Lift your right heel. Okay? See if you can get it off the ground. Okay? Now, turn your weight in the other direction. And now you'll understand what it means to be on one leg. No, with your foot off the ground. Physically not touching the ground. Then turn. Okay, fine. Good. Now let's go back again. Now you don't have to pick your foot off the ground. But if you want to know if your weight's on one leg, here's another simple test. Okay, put your weight onto your right leg. Turn your waist. Now, take your foot and bend it backwards towards your knee. And if you can stand there with no problem, your weight was on one foot. And if you can't, your weight wasn't. And put it back down again without having your hips move all over the place. And this is a simple statement that your weight was on one foot. Okay? So now we try this again. I should mention this is going to be harder with your arms up in the air. Why? It's like a balance beam. The longer the balance beam gets, the harder it is to keep the balance. The shorter it is, the shorter the fulcrum length and the tighter the area your balance has to maintain in. So put your arms up in the air. So you've been standing here for a certain point of the time and you want to shift. Okay, good. Now shift your weight to one leg. It doesn't matter which one it is. There is no rule about do your left or do your right first. Let your heel come off the floor. So you have no weight on that leg. Now, turn your body as far to 45 or even 90 degrees you can get by turning the muscles of your leg. Okay? Good. Now, turn the muscles of your leg and bring your heel to where it's parallel to your front foot. Okay, pick your foot up. Shift your weight, pick your foot up, and turn. Now, only turn as far as you feel you have the balance. Oh, now, wait a second. You got to make sure that your kneecap, your toe, and your heel are in parallel to the center line of your body. Okay, now stand there for a bit. Drop your elbows. And remember all the stuff we did before, you know? Legs up, blah, blah, blah. Now go through all the steps. Opening and closing. You have to bend the leg that is holding your weight must be bent. And it doesn't bend at the knee, it bends at the quad. Bends right at your hip socket. Now you'll notice that when you're on one leg, there's this real tendency for everything in your body to want to feel like it's going upward, like it's squeezing upward. That, folks, is a tension response. That's the stress response. As soon as anybody gets stressed, all their chi goes flying toward their brain. Now, great, now. Remember that sinking I said about sinking all the way down to your feet? Let's do it. So completely negate, erase, neutralize, reduce, eliminate, make it go bye-bye. All that upward pulling. So everything just settles. This is where now you're going to find out about the alignments in your legs. So now you have to do the same degree of alignment with both legs but both of them aren't holding you up. Only one is. Now, if your hands were low, bring them a little bit higher. Just start raising them just to see what this does to your balance. And stop at each point that you can feel and recognize what that upward pulling is like. Like the muscles of your face want to go up, your chest wants to rise, your ribs want to rise. And then just from the top of your head, completely sink all your energy down to your feet. Now, when you hold this, you open and close, doing the same thing. You're now trying to thread your entire body and reduce the blockages that are in it. Now, as you release more, your hands should be able to release further away from your body. But understand, your hands going out of your body is not happening from your shoulder muscle. It's because your internal organs in your spine are releasing. Now let your brain go relaxed. Let the area around your heart go relaxed. Let the area around your lower dantian go relaxed. And let your feet relax. If you do all three of those, four of those, your chi will start moving into your hands much more easily. Remember, the sense you want to have is everything dropping, not everything rising. When the body physically tenses, it pulls you up. That's what it does. Now return to the middle. Turning your body, leave your hands where they are. Just pivot your feet. And now in that position, again, any tension or anything you felt being on one leg, you should finish with your feet being parallel to each other. Pivoting on the ball of your foot is not pivoting on your heel, just to mention it as a technical point. Then now go back and do everything you did with the standing. And what you did standing with two legs, you now want to simply smooth out everything that got discombobulated when you were on one leg. If your body was at a level on one leg of a level of tension or some sort of disconnections of 10, now you want to stand until it goes down to 9.5. Make it go lower if you can, but if you get to 9.5, that's good. Just has to be a little bit. Drops of water, as they flow into a reservoir, eventually will fill it. Small things become big things over time, not immediately. And now turn your body to the other side. Remember, shift your weight. When your weight's 100% on one leg, lift your heel off the ground and turn as best you can. And now you're going to try and keep that 9.5 you had when your 2 feet were together. But then again, one side of your body may be dramatically more blocked than the other, and the 9.5 will go to a 10.5. That's okay. Do your best. Do the best you can to reduce it to 9.5. That's it. Do your best to make it come back to where it was with both feet together. And if anything, the leg that has no weight on it should develop more energy than the leg that's holding your weight. There's a principle in Tai Chi, there's a principle in Bagua, and there's a principle in Xing Yi, which is used more in some schools of Xing Yi than others. And the principle in Chinese is called empty and full, Xu Shi. And the definition is full of weight, and obviously if you're standing on one leg, it's full of weight. That's the leg that's full of weight. The leg that's empty and is empty of weight is full of energy. Your power generation comes from the empty leg, not from the full leg. All physical body mechanics use the weight on the full leg more and the empty leg less. When you start playing around with Qi, it's the exact opposite. So now holding that position, remember, open and close. Close into the center, open out to the periphery. And as you close and open each time, get the energy from the crown of your head, your fingertips, and your feet to come into your lower dantian. And as you open outward, it goes from your dantian to your extremities, your toe tips, your fingertips, and your head. Releasing, and during that entire period of time, let this downward flow of energy keep coming down from your head. continuously clearing anything that's stuck in your system. So that when you open and close your body, and that shows you where something is stuck, the downward clearing of energy releases it, the sinking of energy, and then later on, the dissolving of the specific point that's stuck releases it. That sinking energy is always part of outer dissolving, but outer dissolving is not part of sinking. Let your eyes relax. The stronger you feel your energy sinking, the more the very crown of your head, by the way, if you make a line between your two ears, the center of two ears, that should have a sense of rising. So the more the sinking of energy activates your yin meridians, the opening up of the crown of your head activates the yang. Clear the best you can. Return back to the middle. Making sure that you do not get an energetic disconnection between either of your legs or either of your hands. This is now just a continuum. It's not a stop and a start. And now again, you let that, and you try and reduce the level of tension, reduce the level of contraction, reduce the level of what feels like strength, reduce anything that feels weird until the chi starts to flow from your lower dantian to your extremities and back from your extremities to your lower dantian, a bit smoother, a bit clearer, and a bit more strongly. So what you're doing can be compared to tanning leather, the way you take a stiff piece of leather and you just keep on folding it one way and the other till it softens, 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 and the leather becomes more springy and useful. So this going between standing on both feet and going to the left, to be facing the left and facing the right, this constant movement between is like the tanning of leather. It'll be harder when you're on one leg, and then when you come back to the middle, you strengthen it, you release whatever was that was bound, and you go to the other leg. Hopefully, if you've released it on the other two sides, more will flow through. Another blockage will show up. You'll release that. You'll come back to the middle. You'll release what blockage is there, trying to get stronger, becoming more stable. It takes a long time before you will feel as stable on one leg as you will on two. And that's natural. But the object is eventually that when your weight is either on both legs or only on one leg, you will feel equally stable and the energy running through your legs will be equally as powerful. In martial art, two-legged things, it's considered to be in all internal martial arts a fault to have your weight 100%, to have your weight exactly evenly distributed, because that takes everything into the muscles of the body. And it does not take the shifting forth between the yang and yin forces in the body. The least it could ever be is 51-49. And usually the least it ever actually in practicality ever goes is 55-45 or 60-40. And that's any martial art. Some Chen style stances are 55-45. Many of the schools of Xingyi and Bagua have 60-40 stances, but always there's a predominance. One leg is primarily empty, one leg is primarily full. And that also translates into your hands, where one hand is primarily empty and one hand is primarily full. Of course, how far the primarily goes is nothing more than a statement of more or less. 0 and 100 being the strongest there is. But how much is it physical? How much is it energetic? In terms of martial arts, let's just say if you can pull a fighting technique off, you can do it, end of statement, end of day. Does it really much matter how you did it? But when it comes to your health, it matters rather dramatically, because imbalances in the systems, in a human bodily system, is done by balancing out yin and yang. It's not just if it's particularly physically stronger, energetically stronger. So you have to understand, as the context gets different, the rules of the game shift, because what you're trying to do is different. Now everybody, if your hands were low, at least put them up in the posture where your elbows were down, your hands were 45 degrees. Now, go through everything we did this morning. First bring your energy up to your legs, then just drop it. Then, okay, then bring them into the center and make them go from the center to the periphery and back and forth. There are many, many rhythms that are taught within Santi or standing postures about the speeds and the way in which you make the energy come to the center and go to the periphery, or up and down, or in the front of your body, or the back of your body, or the side of your, or the left side or the right side of your body. There are all these variables. But the big thing, the great giant stroke, is simply that there is a constant flow that is going between your extremities and your dantian, and then again out to your extremities. The second major flow that's always instituted in all standing postures is up to down and down to up. And the third major flow is essentially from around the body, from the back to the front and the front to the back. Between those three, as they all combine, you get the transferences of energy from the left side to the right side of your body. Now, there are many methods, and someone said this morning, oh, that's a lot of information. I want you all to think about something. Many paintings can be painted. If someone were to draw a painting of your body, it could be the body of someone who is frail, someone who is strong, someone who is healthy, someone who can't think, someone who can think. Pick any human qualities you want. But the act of making a painting is that you can just make a big, broad stick figure, or you can start making it where it's fleshed out. And the more it's fleshed out, shall we say, usually the greater impact of the painting. So that's the case with art. So with these techniques, in a way, it's not information. It's about embodying something that becomes part of your flesh. It's not about knowing something. It would be an utterly useless thing just to only understand the information. Because then you could make pretty pictures in your head, but you couldn't use it. To use it, you both have to know what the picture, where it's going, but you need to be able to feel and pull it out. The finest seeds in the world don't do any good if you don't pour water on them. They don't grow. They need water and sunlight. Practice is water and sunlight. Everyone just take a few minutes rest. Remember, you got to pull everything down into your center to get your hands down. Don't just drop your hands. It's amazing how fast we all forget, isn't it? The whole object of empty and full is to get a person beyond needing physical leverage. Then if you stick physical leverage in it too, well, you get more. Most ordinary martial arts are not based on these energetic principles. They're based upon leverage. Or, for example, the phrase in Shaolin, the phrase in the internal martial arts in general is, it's either jie or shou. It's shou fa. Shou means to absorb, to store, to a magnet. It does show to the iron particles. Do you understand? And fa is like, and the dust goes flying. That's the principle of the internal martial arts. That's the principle of the internal standing practice, is to work on the storing and the releasing of energy. You have a different thing. In Shaolin, for example, the phrase is tun tu, and tun means to suck in, and tu means to spit. Like this would, that's tun tu. And that's what they do with their muscles and everything, and they release it. But that's not the same thing as absorbing energy and releasing it. Because one is purely based on a physicality. It's based upon your muscles, your blood vessels, the nerves, like going like this and then shooting out. And that's a very, very different thing, because when you actually get the thing of storing and releasing, you can have both operating at the same time. When you do the action of Tuân Tu, or suck in and spit out, if you do one, you don't do the other. If you suck in, you suck in. If you spit out, you spit out. Okay, it's like you store and then boom, you throw something. Where once you start getting the idea of absorption and discharge, absorption, storing, absorption, throwing out, discharging, then both of those can happen in your arms simultaneously, or at the point of contact simultaneously. And you can actually adjust how much you pull in and how much you push out. And that's something that makes a lot of the motions in internal martial arts. Nobody can figure out what the hell the person's doing, because you can't see it. It's not happening in any way that's visible. Tuân Tu is always visible. You have to have a good eye to be able to tell the way their body's moving when they move. But absorption and discharge is invisible. And the classic thing they say in Xinghu comes, this is what's called Mingjing, or obvious power. And obvious power, though it has this, you can also see where the body's doing Tuân Tu to some degree. Then it goes to Anjing, where you can't see anything, it's invisible. Then you go to Huajing, where there's literally nothing, not even an aftertaste. There's nothing to analyze. Okay? If you're very good in An, you have to be very subtle to analyze it, but you can. With Hua, you can't. Okay, so I'm just telling you that's what the art is. Okay, now we go for the next thing. Now let's consider another very basic thing that's going to happen with your hands. There is up and there is down. When you do with your hands down here, instead of facing your dantian but facing downward this way, you are in effect doing, you could say it's on. On means to press downward, your energy pressing. But it's not pressing, it's simply penetrating. Okay? For something to press, if you want to get it, the thing is very, very simple. Sit on the floor for a second, put your hands and lift your body off the floor by straightening your arms. That's what pressing means. Okay? You press down, your body goes up, because if your hands are on the floor and you press down, it'll stick your butt off the floor, at least one hopes. Okay? That is what normally will happen. So now you have a series of postures that are meant to, and this is essentially one posture, of which can be done in several ways, that is meant to inculcate that. So, the way Wang Shujing did it in here is he did it all the way. His posture went like this. He would take it from here. You see this? You see my hands have the sense of pressing downward? It would go from here, it would go out. It actually, the way the hand would normally go out is it actually would raise the energy up the back of the hand and then down. So now this didn't just press his hands down toward his feet like he was pressing the floor. The effect it had is that then if you have your head going up, it takes all the energy in your body from the crown of your head all the way through your feet, and it presses it all the way down into the ground until it finally completely attaches to the ground. And that's all the techniques that are done, come over here, Isaac, that are done in martial arts where you're over like this, and you get and Isaac wants to attack me, and I just go a little bit this way, he goes down. Or if my hand's up here, and I just go a little bit down, down he goes. Or if my hand's here and he tries to go low, down he goes. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a kick, a punch, it's a throw. If he were trying to throw me, all I do then is I just push my hand right in his hip down to his feet. So you're not going anywhere because you're grounding it. There has to be some place for the person to get the leverage to do something, and all you're doing is taking all the leverage away. Okay, so they haven't got the leverage. Okay, fair enough. That's how that's done. Now, what you're looking for with this is that, for a moment, everybody take their hand and put it on the other hand. And get your hands away from your body, no supports. Now, without moving your hand, just let that hand get heavy and start having the feeling of it pressing through and going through your body, right through your body down to your feet. I'm not talking about pushing it. I'm talking about literally this sense of pressing. The energy of your hand, have it go through your arm, down your legs, down to your feet. Now, if you do it super well, then you do this, and you have it go into your hand, and you have it start taking it down from your head, through your neck, and your shoulders, and your arms, and all the way down to your feet. And that's the feeling you're after, because that's what it is. That's where it's going. I don't say you're going to arrive at this moment in time, but did you all get a bit of a sense of that, of something traveling through your body? That's a question. Well, that is what you are trying to do. There are several heights this is done at. Wong did this one, which is generally considered to be the hardest one. The lower your hands go in space, the harder it is to get this dropping to happen from your head down to your feet. Can you understand that? It's harder. It's easier here. Yes, whether your hand's over here or your hand's over here, doesn't really much matter. It's easier here. This is the easiest, because at least your hands are more or less starting where your head is to go through. So the lower your hands get, the more difficult it is, but the more developmental it is. Okay? This is everything where you're taking it for, Tai Chi people, you can see what posture is this? I mean, that's what it is. It's Lo Shi Ao Bu, give or take. But when it's done over this sort of a 45-degree angle like here is actually the hardest one to pull it off on. This is actually easier. The 45 is the hardest and considered to be kind of the holy grail, because, if you can do that for martial arts, it works well. I'm not going to go into what is medically, because now you got to start moving into the subject of the 200 postures, and that's a very full thing on Chinese medicine. I'm not even going to try it. Okay, there's no time. It's ridiculous to try and fit Cinderella's sister's foot into her shoe. It just don't go. Okay? But now it's very important in all these ones when you do it that there has to be a very strong sinking now along the sides of your body. Do you understand? Through your lats, through your midriff, the side of the body has to have a very strong sinking. And the stronger this downward becomes, the stronger the sense the crown of the head going up. Okay? And that then becomes tricky. Very tricky, because as the head goes up from here, to actually get it fitting to where the stronger the head goes up, the stronger the blood goes down here in the Clavian vessels. Those are hard things to get all. It's hard to get those Lego pieces, those jigsaw pieces to come together, but it's doable. It just takes a bit of time. Okay, so the next one now is this sort of pressing. Now, when you press, it's very important that if you do a lower one, that the tips of your elbows be facing to the floor, to the ground, as opposed to like this. The answer you're asked, if you want to ask the question, can you do it with your elbows out to a 45-degree? Yes. But the second part of it, does it actually make it dramatically more difficult to end up being able to do it for real? Yes. So although it's a little bit harder with your elbows down to begin with, it actually gets you to where you're going a hell of a lot faster than if your arms are out to a 45. Okay? That's a fact. It's not your arms being clenched in like this. See if you can see the lengthening that's going on. See my hands right here? Now just watch. Well, watch my body, my torso, as well as you're watching my arms. Can you see how my body from the inside is getting a lot longer? Yes or no? Is that visible? That's a question. Yes, it is. That's important. And it's that at each point that, let's say I get to here, oh, but I feel it stuck. Oh, when I get that release internally because I've cleared the channels enough, then guess what can happen? Well, the body can come out a little bit more. And then it reaches a point where it naturally locks because the channels are too closed to let it open. Then when all that through the up and the down, the sensitive periphery releases, oh, now it comes down a bit more. And there is a whole science to this about how you have actions of what's going through your armpits to your internal organs and what's going from your spine out to the outside of your hands and your fingers. There's a whole art to that, which I teach sometimes, but there's not enough time at this moment. I did a thing called the Bagua Mastery Program that just got released. I think it's going to be released one more time before it's going to go to sleep for 2 years. So I have a lot of this type of internal information in there. So if you want, all I can say is, from what at least what I'm told, the current theory of the office is at the end of this year, they're going to cut it off and they're not going to put it out again for a while. So if you want to get it or your friends want to get it, all I got to say is do it now or wait a while, quite a while. Now, here you have this. So now the next question is it also done to the side like this? Sometimes yes, but this posture is normally done at a 45-degree angle. There are ones where it's held at 45, but those are actually, other hand positions are better, and those aren't part of Ichuan. Okay, those aren't Ichuan postures. Those are postures that Bagua has, but Ichuan doesn't have. Okay? So everybody hear me? Not there. You ain't going to find it. Look all you want. It's not going to work. Now, the next thing is that So you have this here. So you have this, the lowest posture, which is the best. But then the next one, a lot of people can't. They get to about here, which is about the level of their heart, somewhere between their heart and their diaphragm. And that really depends upon how loose your body is. And the last one is it's done like this. But when it's done with the upper hand, with the palms down, it's never done higher than the ear. There's no point doing it higher than the ear, because then there are other postures that you do when you go up higher. Usually, either you get it somewhere around the diaphragm heart level, or you get it down here, of which this is the more classic, this is the more difficult. Many teachers who teach in many places they don't teach this because it's harder. Okay, because a lot of people would simply rather have something that's a little bit easier. Okay, it isn't as good, but you know, you can do it. All I'm doing is just telling you what the facts on the ground are. When I learned, I only did this. And once I did this, these other ones were a piece of cake. That's all I can tell you. Okay, so I realize it might be a little bit difficult, but the phrase is, you know, small effort, small gain, big effort, big gain. And I will tell you that if you want the big gain, then you got to go for the big effort. And if you want the small gain, you got to go for the small effort. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. And the choice ultimately is yours, because that's the joy of being an adult and being free. Okay? This is, you know, the joy, the terror, the good part, the bad part, any way you want to put it. Okay, so have you got what this posture is about? Yes or no? So do you have any questions about this? Okay, so how do you go into this posture? General rule, right? You should always do this one first. If you're going to do the lower one. Hello? If you're going to do the lower one, you do this one first, because then what you'll get, we're going to go back to this in a moment, some of this rising energy, or this actually is even more the rising energy, that you want to open up the sides of your body, because without the sides of your body, the flanks, the lateral side, without that being open, it's very difficult. Here, you can do this just with the left and the right. But once you want to start extending all the way out to here, the chi in the side of your body has to open up, or it's just not going to do it. I mean, what it needs to do it is not there. Okay? So, from here, the next thing is that the hands, look at me right now, the hands start having this raising energy, what is called in martial arts Pungjin. The Pungjin starts coming up until it fills up your whole flanks, up to the side of your neck and your head, to where in this you get your energy to rise all the way up to here, and then from the rising up, your hand goes down and does the pressing, which takes it all the way down, and your hands start to press out. Now the ideal way is that your hands press, not just here, but look, see my fingers? Watch. See this? What are you noticing they're doing? Slowly but surely, with the elbows bent, they're coming out. Was that clear or fuzzy? Are we all right? Okay, good. If you say you're all right, I say you're all right. That's it. And then we find out where it all ends up at the end of the day. Okay, so now here, you would go to here. Look. Can you see how I'm extending out? Yes or no? Now look. See the pressing down? But notice the pressing down here is accompanied by, do you see the way my head's rising and my torso's rising in this space? So the more there is down, the more there is up. The more there is up, the more there is down. It's like an elevator. You can't separate one from the other. How are we doing? Where is the center of your focus? It's on your palms, but if you're really going to do it, it has to be not just your palms, but it's got to go from your palms. It has to reach your fingertips. Now, whether you do it with your fingers extended or your fingers very light, I don't know as that matters much, but what does matter much is that it goes into your fingertips.
This posture strongly connects the sides of your upper and lower body to your lower dantian. The palms pressing down causes the energy of the collateral or belt acupuncture meridians to fully activate. This position is particularly useful for clearing and balancing the energy of the liver and kidneys. In terms of martial arts, it creates the bodily structure and internal power that allows strikes or pushes begun at the height of the waist to rise up and activate with great strength. To defend yourself against your opponent's punches and kicks, This posture gives you the power to contact his hands or legs and control them. This is done by pressing your opponent's chi from the contact point down to his feet, where it bounces up again to destabilize his balance. This can enable you to do Fa Jin, to discharge power to move your opponent. This posture may be done with the palms facing the body at any height between the collarbones and the bottom of the chest. Having the palms facing inwards in terms of martial arts can be used to bring your opponent's hands or torso towards you. From a health perspective, this hugging a tree posture with palms facing your body strongly opens up the energy of the middle body, including the diaphragm, heart, and lungs, by causing chi to be absorbed into these areas. In addition, this posture begins to strongly move energy within the left and right channels of the body. This and many other postures are done in two ways, either with palms towards the body or with them facing away from the body. These two variations of essentially the same posture are two sides of the same coin. With palms facing outwards, it's the opening phase, and with palms facing towards the body, it's the closing phase. In this posture, the energetic function of having the palms facing away from the body is to capture, develop, and amplify the strength of the chi inside the arms and outside the forearms and hands. When the palms are facing outwards, it develops the ability to do Fa Jin, or project energy away from the body, either for strikes, pushes, or throws. In terms of health, this posture with palms facing outwards causes chi to move out of the middle internal organs, the diaphragm, heart, and lungs, and circulate throughout the entire body. This posture, where the elbows are facing downwards, causes a direct sinking pressure into the internal organs below the diaphragm. In martial arts, this is a classic position for developing Peng Jin, expansive power in the forearms and hands. The downward pressure of the elbows and the upward and outward pressure of the hands and forearms causes an internal type of tearing pressure that naturally releases the energy of Peng Jin and Fa Jin. It's also the classic on guard position, where at least one of your hands will contact your opponent's arm or high kick attacks. From a health perspective, this posture is used to strongly balance the energy of the upper and middle internal organs. The same separating energy that causes Peng Jin also strengthens the middle and upper internal organs, including the heart, lungs, diaphragm, spleen, liver, kidneys, and digestive valves.
Okay, first, down the legs. Up the legs, down the extremities of the lower dantian. Build the juice and have the back of your hands start going toward the side in your forearms until your hands are at the side like this. Holding a ball with your hands on the side. There you go. And eventually, if this happens, you'll feel a lot of energy pushing outward from your arms. But then again, this posture is also used to have energy pushing out from the arms and pulling into the dantian at the exact same time. For some of you who do martial arts, every technique in martial art that does this with a hand, basically, the energetics of it come from this posture. Period. This is this. Do you understand? It's just the reverse. Boom, boom. It's not that complex. Not easy to do, but not that complex either. Not easy to do, I should say, but not that complex either. But it's always the funniest things. The things that work the best in the world are very often not complex, just damn hard to do. Such is reality. Okay, now get your hands all the way out to the side. Now, let your energy now start expanding from your lower dantian the next time it stores up, and let it just get your hands to raise up like that, like they're going to lift something up. They're pushing something up toward the ceiling. Until your palms and your fingers are basically parallel to the floor. Now, bending the elbows as your head goes up, start pressing downward. The more your hands press down, the more your body lengthens into the crown of your head and above, and the more your feet press into the ground. So this is a posture that's pressing downward. Now understand something, most of these postures in Chinese have these, poetic names, and the poetic name is linked to a story, and sometimes the story actually has something to do with what you're doing in the posture, and sometimes it doesn't. Some of them actually, they do, and some of them it's just that, there are certain poetic, allegoric phrases that fly all around Chinese culture, just like in American culture. Go for it. What the hell does that mean? Go for what? But it's a phrase, and it's a popular phrase, And they come out of Shakespeare and old poets of the old days, or something an old Greek said, or something an Indian said, or something somebody said, and it gets stuck in the culture, and then all of a sudden it has some kind of meaning, and then that meaning all of a sudden when you say it, the person has a pretty vague idea what it means, but they may or may not know exactly what you mean, but at least they can say, and it gives them confidence they know what it means. Okay, well, a lot of the postures in Chinese are like that, and some of them they just say, fists going up toward the ceiling, or, needle. For example, the phrase I like in Tai Chi is needle at the sea bottom. Excuse me, what are you talking about? You're dropping a needle to the sea bottom? Please. But that comes from a whole allegory and one out. What does it just mean? It means that your fingers are really penetrating down. So, but what it actually means is not necessarily can be figured out by the name, just as I have to tell you. It's not just, you say a lot of phrases that are in English, and you say that to a Chinese and you literally translate it, they just keep wagging their head back and forth. What the hell could that possibly be? And that's cultural stuff. Things just get called by certain names because of cultures. Everybody who lives in the culture think that's the way it's always been for everybody all over the world. It's just not true. You go another place, they haven't even heard the words. So again, I'm trying to give you what the functions of this are, because ultimately that is what is transcultural. That is what you're trying to do, not the name you're calling it. Call ice cream, poo-pah. Doesn't matter as long as when you know poo-pah, you get some ice cream in your mouth. It doesn't much matter. Now, the real trick in this, I will tell you the real trick in this posture, that it took me years, and I would have to say I was into it a good 6 or 7 years before I finally kind of got it, is that if you take the crown going up, you take the feet going down, you take the hand pressing down, there's a certain point where you do it, where all of a sudden, everything is very strong that you're trying to do. It's like you hit zero gravity. It's like all of a sudden it's effortless to do, and all of a sudden it's like you're in a suspension zone. And somehow out of that suspension zone, you can do things. And that's about as close as the standing in Yichuan gets to the doctrine of emptiness in Buddhism and Taoism. That suspension zone. It's not the same thing as emptiness, but it has aspects of emptiness to it. Now, there will be a tendency for your head to turn left or right, for your spine to twist this way or that way, because all this is going to be about the way the channels of energy are in your body. You will notice internally you will feel parts of your body wanting to distort. Recognize those, because very often what you're recognizing at that time is the way that your body is beginning a distortion that will ultimately end up in a disease, or at least some sort of a radical imbalance. It's like the ever-famous bullet. When you fire it, it hits a leaf, and so instead of going straight, it ends up, a mile in the other, on an off angle. Well, it doesn't start off a mile away. It starts off 1/1000th of a millimeter. But it starts in that direction. And one of the things that you're doing with standing postures is trying to what they call making the crooked channels straight. That phrase has been used in China and India, and to the best of my knowledge, everywhere else. It's simply taking a channel that's not working and trying to bring it around to where it's straight, which means it's flowing without obstruction. Because as the obstruction starts to happen, if it grows in strength, it goes further and further into distortion. And one of the big things about standing is to try and stop it before it ever starts to distort. Or if your channels are distorted, being able to recognize it and do something about it. And the standing posture just makes it very easy because it's a point counterpoint. You know, you've just got this one thing, you're standing there, gravity's fighting you. And now you've got to make everything in your body balance, because when you do, gravity seems to go away. So you feel the gravity, you don't feel the gravity, gives you an idea about whether or not you're really entering into the posture. You feel something in your body is trying to be twisty and weird, and you just make it to where finally you get it to where it's smooth and clean. This is the process of straightening out crooked channels. Now this posture, the thing that makes it very hard is this posture is normally meant to be done with the back of the hand parallel to the floor, because there is a tendency to have your hands, instead of being parallel, to start dropping. That's not how this posture is done. It should be parallel to the floor. That's very important because that's the way the chi runs through your wrist. And even when you're down here, I know there's a tendency, many of you want to have your hands just kind of flop down. That's really not what you're after. And it's not that you're going to use a lot of strength to hold it as. It's somehow you've got to get that energy that's pumping through your system to move through your wrist till it's effortless to keep your hand in a parallel position to the floor. So that's important. Now again, shift your weight to one leg. Let's just everyone shift it to their right. That way we're not going to bump into each other. That's it. And again, how do you shift your weight to the other leg? Well, that's a subject of energy gates. That's a subject of Tai Chi, about how weight is shifted. It's a subject of Xingyi, but Opie Energy Gates, shows how to do that. Okay, let your heel come off the floor. Remember to keep your legs equally open, both the leg without weight and the leg with weight. And now turn as far as you can go comfortably to the side. And now again, you're going to be pressing, and it's not that easy to have the weightless foot press into the ground. You want to be on the ball of your foot, and your heel wants to be off of the floor. It was deliberately done this way in each and in a lot of the standing postures, and not have you putting your foot on the floor, so that you had to get what you were doing with your chi. Because if you put your foot flat on the floor, you're going to start using the muscles of your legs to hold you up. And the way you're going to get your separation is just a separation of physical pressure. You're now trying to get the leg you're standing on has a distinct sense of physicality, and the leg that is empty has a distinct sense of non-physicality and chi moving through it. And this starts helping you to get the difference between the two. And it was always done this way. And I have to say that, for example, when I first was doing this a lot, I did it with Kenichi Sawai in Tokyo, and with Wang Shujing, but with Sawai I really did a lot in the beginning. I have to say that everybody that used to effectively go, oh shit, he's going to go on one leg again. Because sometimes the old man would just kind of get so much into doing, and next thing you know, he'd be standing on one leg for 1 hour. And heaven help the poor son of a bitch who moved. I mean that as a literal statement. Because when the sparring came up next, let's say you reminded why you shouldn't do that. But that was old school of a previous century and a previous time. Old China, old Japan, before World War II, from, let's just say, the Civil War to before World War II, was, let's just say, it could be rather severe. And leave it at that. Okay, move your weight back to the center. And remember, whatever got blocked, now when your feet go together, you got to unblock it. You got to unblock it. Where it got weak, you got to at least bring it back to par. Okay, now turn the other way. Remember, all you're doing is you're pivoting on the ball of, you're just letting your heel move with your waist. It's like as though the nail is in the ball of your foot and it's not moving. Now, although you can do this by, lifting your toe up in the air and leaving your heel as the pivot point, that classically was done in Tai Chi. It was never done in the I Chuan standing postures. Although you could say that 70% of Tai Chi, Xingyi, and Bagua is pretty close to the same, 30% of it is the actual internal work they do. They're all made of the same components, but their strategies, because they're as arts, they have a different way of doing what they do. 30% of what they do is really quite different. But because 70% of it, or more than 70% of it is the same, Sun Ludan came up in the 1930s and started using the term Neijia Chuan and said they were all one family, because the bulk of what they do is the same. It's like the bulk of the members of the family is the same. Let's not say every individual is the same. That would be a mistake. The straightening of the spine, the lengthening of the spine comes from the front of the spine. The ability of the energy of the spine to drop down toward your feet comes from the back of your spine. Qi rises up the interior part of the spine and drops down the posterior part of the spine. While we're simply dealing with the outside of the spine. Once we're into the core, it's a different game. But that's a very high level of standing, one which is quite beyond anything we could do today. Now come back to the middle. And now going through the stages, just stay there for a minute, smooth everything out as best you possibly can, and let your Qi drop to your lower dantian. And now closing in, remembering stopping at several levels if you need to smooth yourself out. Have your hands go back down. But when you start bringing your hands back down, all of a sudden everything starts going wonky. Everything isn't smooth. Stop there. Smooth everything out. Center to periphery, periphery to center. Smooth it out. When it's smooth, again, you can begin to close and bring your hands down. The analogy for this is, in one sense, very simple. If you've been sleeping and someone wants to rouse you out of your sleep, yes, I will grant you they can throw a bucket of cold water in your face or start shaking you like a rag doll. But that really does leave your system somewhat messed up for quite a while. They gently shake you, and they wait for a second. They gently wait some more, so the system wakes up without shock. Well, here, you don't want to have the shock as you start coming down for the next thing, but also you want to make sure that your Qi, which is tong, which is circulating, the shock will break that circulation. You want to make sure that when you bring your hands down, you do not break that circulation. You do not shock that circulation and therefore break it. So the point is that from the time that you start, you first get your Qi more or less connecting, And then you keep it connecting, and it gets connected more strongly and more strongly and more strongly. And then at the very end, as you start bringing it back down, it's like you're taking a motor that's revving at 1,000 miles an hour, and you're slowly taking it down to a stop. But it has to be a smooth wind down, not a fast, sudden wind down. Or you break the circulation of your chi, and your system will remember how to break its circulation of chi if you do that. And that's a memory you really don't need. You want to have memories of what makes you healthy, not which makes you unhealthy. You want to have memories of what makes you strong rather than what makes you a weakling. So just bear in mind, that's the consequence of shocking the system and not coming back in a very gradual fashion. And the worst part about it is if when you were going through that, you happen to be in certain mental or emotional states, and then you shock it, because then you lock those in. And that's where it doesn't make for good mental or emotional health either.